You just have to be a spiritually, mentally broken down person to live among this filth. Post-Millennial reports, a new study has revealed that Baltimore, Maryland is the dirtiest city in the country. In determining the nation's dirtiest cities, HouseFresh reviewed 12.3 million sanitation-related complaints to 311 over the past year. Cities that had over 250,000 residents were ranked based on the number of sanitation-related reports, such as garbage, waste, and recycling per 100,000 residents. And they came up with this list of the dirtiest cities. So Baltimore is the dirtiest city. No big surprise there. Here's another thing that's not a surprise. Let's go down the list of the dirtiest cities and see what they all have in common. So we'll look at the city and then also who runs the city. And we'll see if we can notice any patterns emerging. Baltimore, Maryland, number one. Mayor Brandon Scott, Democrat. Sacramento, Mayor Darrell Steinberg, Democrat. Charlotte, Mayor V. Lyles, Democrat. Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass, Democrat. Memphis, Mayor Paul Young, Democrat. Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu, Democrat. San Antonio, Mayor Ron Nierenberg, Democrat. Chicago, Brandon Johnson, Democrat. Philadelphia, Jim Kenney, Democrat. Houston, Sylvester Turner, Democrat. All down the list until we get to Las Vegas, Carolyn Goodman, who's a Republican apparently. So of the 15 dirtiest cities, 14 are run by Democrats. And what that tells us is that the Democrat Party fails at the most basic level of civilization. And that's why I think this is like worth talking about for a moment. Because this is actually, even before crime, before safety, this is the first step, the first thing, really, I think, that distinguishes a first world nation from a third world nation. This is the first test of several. Can you get your trash off the street? Waste management. Can you maintain some level of sanitation? If you go to a third world country, this is the first thing you notice, is that it's dirty. Everything is filthy. They leave their trash strewn all over the place. You know, I mean, the ancient Roman Empire 2,000 years ago figured out waste management, and yet there are modern countries who have not figured it out. So this is the first test of civilization. What do you do with your trash? Human beings create a lot of trash. They create a lot of waste. In spite of that, can you have a bunch of humans living together and still keep the trash off the streets? Third world countries fail this test. They all do. And it's one of the main things that makes them third world countries, which is what tells you that third world countries will, most of them, always be third world countries. They are, for the most part, I'm afraid to say, basically hopeless cases. Because when it comes to the most basic things, they are literally thousands of years behind the civilized world. But the tragic thing is that lots of American cities also are increasingly failing this test because they have third world populations, thanks in part to mass migration, and they have leadership that lacks the will or even the ability to maintain basic levels of sanitation. And so everything is filthy. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I went back to Los Angeles. I'd been there like 15 years ago and didn't go back for a while. And then I went back for the first time maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I'll never forget driving from the airport to our hotel downtown and just driving past this sea of trash, just trash everywhere. And it reminded me of driving through Kenya. It reminded me of our, 5 or 6 hour car ride from Nairobi down to where the Maasai tribe lives when we were filming What is a Woman. And we drive past town after town that had these giant piles of garbage just sitting there in the middle of the town. And, traditionally back in the, you go back to like the Middle Ages, and churches were always built in the middle of the town. Each town was built up around a church, which served as the focal point, the literal centerpiece of public life. And I remember thinking about that as I'm driving past all these towns, how instead of a church at the center of the town, they had this temple of trash, this monument of garbage and waste. And now a lot of American cities are exactly the same. And this to me is the number one thing that makes city life these days incredibly unappealing. It's not even the crime primarily. I mean, that's number 2 on the list. That's also important. And it's not the cost of living. It's the trash. It's the garbage. It's how dirty and depressing it is, how bad it smells, just all of that. How can you live that way? You have to be, to live that way, you have to be like spiritually broken. You just have to be a spiritually, mentally broken down person to live among this filth, to just like walk around every day and just see garbage and smell it. Human beings are not meant to live that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you can have a highly populated city that is also clean. There's plenty of examples in the world. Tokyo is famously a very clean city. I've never been to it, but this is what you hear. It's a very clean city. How do they achieve that? Well, for one thing, Tokyo is like 95% ethnically Japanese, so they're not importing third world immigrants who have a culture of just throwing their trash on the ground. Also, you know, in Tokyo, you can go to prison for 5 years for illegal dumping, for disposing of your trash improperly. They even got rid of most of their trash cans, most of their public trash cans, and they just make the residents bring their trash home with them. And then they put in place, you know, these potentially very severe punishments and fines and even jail sentences for littering. And but the truth is that they could probably get rid of those penalties and they'd still be extremely clean because that's their culture. They have a culture of cleanliness. Dumping trash on the ground, throwing, you know, drinking a can of soda and throwing it on the sidewalk is not something that most Japanese people would ever do, even if they were allowed to do it. And there are still places in America that are like that, you know, where there's a culture of cleanliness and orderliness. They're rapidly vanishing, but they do exist. You know, I used to live in a small town out in the country, and I remember once at the gas station, we had one small gas station in the town, and I remember a trash can had somehow tipped over at the I don't know if it, whatever, it tipped over, and it was like the trash was spilling on the ground. And like 4 different people, the guy that works there and 3 other customers, myself included, went over immediately to help clean the trash up. Just clean it up. And they took the bag out and put a new bag in. So it's a small thing, no great act of service, right? We're not heroes, but my point is that in Baltimore, that's not happening. You know, in Baltimore, the trash spills over and everyone just leaves it there. Certainly, you're not going to get all customers at the gas station chipping in unprompted to help clean up the mess. It's just not going to happen because it's a culture of disorder. It's a culture of waste. It's a culture of, again, when you're in the city and you're walking down and you see just some bag of trash or some whatever piece of litter on the sidewalk, that means obviously, right, that somebody was walking along and they just threw the thing on the ground. Think about what kind of mentality. It seems like such a, this is why I'm at, even though I'm not much of an environmentalist, I am on this point. When it comes to littering, I'm like an extreme environmentalist when it comes to litter. I honest to God, would be fine if we had 5-year prison sentences for littering. Because I think that behavior is it's such an attack on civilized society. It says so much about you. It like tells me immediately that you are a person who we don't need living in society. That you would drink something and throw it on the ground and just keep walking. I can't even wrap my head around that. The total disregard for everybody else around you. I'd be in favor of ratchet up the penalties times 100 for that. I'd be in favor of it. You know, even here in Nashville, this is why you can't go to I love to fish. You can't go fishing at a lot of the lakes here that are close to the city because you just find this trash floating in the water. People, they just throw their trash, like whole bags of trash. It's like I was at one of these lakes last year. There's a bag of McDonald's. It's like a McDonald's bag. Someone had McDonald's and threw it in the water. Okay. How about 10 years in prison for that? I swear to you, I would support it. I don't care who it is. Find whoever that was that threw that in there. 10 years in prison. But in some ways, it's like even if you tried to do that, you're fighting this kind of losing battle because you're in these communities that have a culture of, as I said, disorderliness and waste. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.